good lighting. My name is Rebecca Robertson, and I'm president of Park Avenue Armory, and I'm really delighted to invite you to see you here tonight to hear a wonderful talk with artist Nick Cave, who's done the Let Go, which is here in the Drill Hall. I don't know how many of you have seen it. So how many of you have seen it? Aha, okay, last night. It was amazing, I'm telling you. It's a beautiful, beautiful piece of work. So joining Nick will be Bob Faust, who's his partner, and who's been very involved in every creative piece. The amazing Nona Hendryx, and Noel Higgenson, who you will, those of you who have not had the pleasure of hearing her sing, will certainly hear her if you see it tonight. So I'd like to bring to the stage all of these and Nick Cave. And they're supposed to come in. Oh, I'm sorry. And it will be moderated by our artist-in-residence Malik Gaines.
Rebecca already handily introduced all of us, so let's invite everyone in. We have from the Let Go, Ahmaya Knoelle Higginson, who is an extraordinary core of this performance and whose choir she leads incredibly. We have, maybe I'll take this side. We have only one of the greatest songwriters and performers of our age, Nona Hendryx, here. And of course, anywhere, we're cozy, we can go anywhere, right? And of course, Nick Cave, whose Let Go we are a part of. And the artist Bob Faust, who directs this and many of Nick Cave's projects. Welcome to this is the Board of Officers room, I believe, and one of the interesting things about working in this building is having the peering eyes of these gentlemen everywhere you go. Another thing about this building is this tremendous drill hall, which is an unusual kind of space, a very large space, a theatrical space, and you've all come together in this incredible performance, and there's also a large-scale installation that can't be missed. I wonder if you, Nick, and Bob would talk a little bit about coming up with the idea for what kind of installation to do here, and then from there maybe we could say how it became a collaborative space for performance.
Hi everyone. You know, when I was invited to do a project here at the Park Armory, Tom Eccles had actually come to Mass Mocha when I was installing that project, and offered me a project here, and I was, you know, sure, but I can't think about that right now, because I have to like focus on Mass Mocha, which was enormous. But, you know, I really wanted to, you know, I had perhaps a year to think about it. I also knew that I was coming off such a major project that, you know, what is the sort of continuation in that, what is continuation of work at that scale? And I really wanted to sort of pare back 100%. And so that's how I sort of approached this project, because the Mass Mocha was made up of just an abundance of material. And here it's really just one single element that occupies the space. And I wanted, and so that was one important factor. And I think the other thing is that, you know, the Park Armory is a destination, you know. So I think more about what does that mean for one to travel here, and what do I want them to experience? So that's plays a very, very important sort of role in the decision making. That, you know, for me, if I'm traveling somewhere to see something, it better, you know, for sure be worth it. So, you know, this is the way that I think. This is sort of what I need for myself, and it's really what I want to deliver to the audience, the community.
Yeah, and I think not every artist can use that scale, but it's a part of what you've done. But it's also one simple material, but it echoes materials that show up in very small details in some of the famous garments that you've made. So it's really it's a simple choice, but it fills space really well.
Yeah, and it's a sound suit. That's a sound suit in there, so.
Yes.
And the scale if you haven't seen the performance, I don't want to give anything away because it's really ordered in a really special way that is, you know, powerful. But there is the intimacy. You have youth singing. You have a single pianist. And then you have this gigantic space that is filled perfectly with all of this activity. So that scale is part of the performance as well, from the very small, most intimate detail to these massive backdrops. How did you think about bringing a performance element into this?
Well, you know, it's really, you know, that was sort of secondary to the Let Go. So that was, it was a performance that already existed. So it was really sort of, you know, bringing in here was really sort of, it's you know, what I've always been interested in is sort of bringing a project to a city and then working with the city to build the project. So, you know, it was really perfect to bring up right here, but then find these amazing, incredible artists that are here to build the project. So, you know, it's always like in any city, it's a clean slate. You know, we get into the trenches and we really are sort of looking for extraordinary talent. And so, you know, that's how we've met these amazing artists, the kids, the dancers. You know, it's an open call. You know, we are here, really sort of doing workshops and sort of just trying to find the sort of perfect sort of collective to sort of work with, and you know, we all sort of have the same mission and purpose in mind, and so that makes an enormous difference when we, you know, like minds think alike. And so it was really sort of lovely to have that as an understanding, and it has to be fun and not stressful, and because it's so much work. I mean, we're talking a lot of work. And but you know, it's a building. You know, we're building something in the moment.
Yeah, it feels very much that way. I know your baritone. I was really happy to see him there and watch him get all adorned. But also, these tremendous performers are this choir that you direct, Ahmaya Knoelle. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that as an organization and how you got here?
Of course. Hello. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Nick and Bob and the entire team. My gratitude is completely endless for this experience, for being here. The Sing Harlem Choir is a special entity elevated from a group in Harlem. And we are a cultural arts institution, and we're actually right behind the Apollo Theater on 126, between Lenox and 7th. And created by my family. It's a family-run business. My mother and I and my father, who started out in the entertainment business. My mother was the first Black African-American woman disc jockey on primetime radio in New York, and met my father a couple years later, and he was a writer. And then they came together, and my mother told him the story of Doris Troy, who's my aunt, and that they wrote it down because my father was a writer, and that show became the infamous Mama, I Want to Sing. And so I was born into the theater, and that show traveled the world. And my story is really a family story. They say you don't get to choose your parents, but I am extremely grateful. And that same block that Mama, I Want to Sing was about, I was also born into. And my family and ancestry had left some houses for us. They worked really hard. And one of those houses we took, and we made this Mama Foundation institution. It's actually a 5-story brownstone. So my mother came back to Harlem, brought my father and everybody else, and we came back to give back after traveling the world with Mama, I Want to Sing. And a couple of years later, we ran the institution because Mama, I Want to Sing was an outspurt of it. But my mother said, you know what? The music has been taken out of the schools, and I want to do something for the youth. And I had just graduated from college, American Musical and Dramatic Academy. And I said, you know what? I can add the performance arts element to it. And we gathered up some radio friends, and they put an ad on the radio. And kids started to come out. We called an audition. And my mother said, I want to use gospel music. I want to use gospel music as the undergirding of the teaching that we're going to give these kids. And I want to teach it not as a religion, but as an art form. And so we began to teach the youth, and 12 years later, after a double segment on 60 Minutes, the program nonprofit has elevated, and now we are here sitting with you guys, which is absolutely mind-blowing because this piece is so amazing. The Sing Harlem Choir is elevated from the Gospel for Teens program, and these youth are our most trained youth. They go through a training process in our program. They go from freshman, advance, and to a group called Performing Before Live Audiences group, and that's who you guys are going to see tonight if you attend the performance here. But yeah, so that's a small piece, long story short. But I'm just grateful to be here, and thank you so much.
How do you all think the kids are experiencing this? They're not little kids, they're teenagers?
We go from 11 to 19, but the group you see is our most trained, so they're a little bit older. They are mind blown. First of all, they love to sing. That's all they want to do is sing. So any opportunity they get, the Performing Before Live Audiences group, we provide them with platforms for their talent, and so that's how they get to be here. But the reaction last night, they love to see the elements come together. And I was speaking to my mother yesterday. We were trying to figure out how to describe this all, and we came up with discipline meets spontaneity. Art, for us, is discipline meeting coupled with spontaneity. And that's really kind of what this piece brings together, because almost, I would say a good 60% of it is spontaneous, and we're feeding off the energy of the sound suits. We're feeding off the energy of each other. The kids are feeding off the energy of the directors, and it just comes out of us. So some of the music is not planned. We're just giving it on the spot, and the spontaneous part is what the kids feed off of. And it just makes them more present. It makes them stand up and like, I'm ready. What's next? What's going to happen? What's going to move? What part is going to go onto the sound suit next? And so they are ecstatic. Every day's a new day, and we spoke about that as well. There's something new that you can expect.
Yeah. And I was thinking a lot through the performance and after the performance about the relationship between music and dressing up in Black expressive culture. And I was in the African American Museum recently in DC, and there with, you know, Dinah Washington's furs and Dionne Warwick's gown, of course, is one of Nona Hendryx's most incredible outfits. And we were chatting upstairs a little bit about what might come when Nona and 3 other artists have been invited to respond in some way to the work. And the only hint I got was that there was an incredible outfit involved. Yes. I wonder if you want to
That's
hint
how
any
he
more.
sold me on it.
I wonder if you want to hint any more about what you'll do, but also how did you guys come together on this, and what do you think about dressing up? You're one of the leaders in that history.
What do I think about what?
Dressing up as part of
dressing
music
up.
performance.
Oh, it's a daily experience. Dressing up. I met this amazing, well, I knew of Nick Cave, of course, and I would talk about Nick Cave and people would go, oh yeah, I really like his music. And I go like, I know there's sound involved, but not the same. And I was sitting in my bed in my jammies one morning, and I got a phone call from a friend who said, I have somebody who wants to talk to you. His name is Nick Cave. And I went, really? And he put Nick on the phone. There's our friend, a mutual friend, Carl Hancock Rux. And the two of us went, I love you, I love you, I love you, let's do something, I love you. And Nick invited me to come and perform, respond to Until, which was at Mass MoCA. And I said, yes, when? And I did, and it was an amazing experience to be a part of that installation, and it was like walking into a dream. And then I did a performance afterwards in a costume that Nick made for me that is otherworldly. That's the only way I can use it. He designed it, so it's otherworldly. Perfect for me. And then Nick said, well, you know, we're going to do something else, and we're going to do something else. And would you like, yes, when? And then he told me about the Let Go, and would I like to come and be respond to what he was doing. I didn't know what he was doing. I just said, yes, I'll come and respond. And we later on saw each other, and we talked about, you know, you came and I had an idea. And I sent him a couple ideas of what I thought would be my response. And we decided kind of on one, but not totally. And some of the things were left to still be improvised as they happen. And that's how Nick and I met and are continuing this kind of call and response, really, is what it is. He calls and I respond, basically. So, that's
like a great relationship.
Yes.
And this is one part. There's a lot happening in this performance. It feels in one way like it's pretty well systematized. On the other hand, it's alive. There's a lot of movement. There's a lot of variation. And the way I've heard you all talk about this is that you don't want it to be fixed. You want this to be a kind of process. I wonder, Bob, if you want to talk about trying to fix this and then the looseness of it, if that makes any sense.
Well, I think the first thing that I'd love to make sure you all understand is kind of the format of what the Let Go is, and then talk about that a little bit, because the Let Go, that title is the project. It's a big, broad umbrella of a project. And its intent is to give people a place to release all the stuff that we carry around with us every day. And so Nick came up with this installation that happens in the drill hall, and it's a single object. Is this okay that I'm going backwards a little bit?
Yeah, please.
Okay. It's a single object that moves in the drill hall. And it's constantly moving, and it's taking up the entire drill hall. And it is called Chase. So now you've got the Let Go with an installation called Chase. Then there's this idea that in order, well, we all believe that art is one of the most powerful tools that we all have to make change, to come together, to be as humanly possible. And so what this project, but kind of all of Nick's projects are, is you have this kind of this brilliant artist who is at a place in his practice that is secure, that people trust him to give him projects like this. Here, take over this, whatever, 100,000 square foot space. And then he says, in order for it to be as powerful as it can be, I need to invite more people in. Not just people to see the work, but people to make the work. And so that's where the performance Upright shows up. Upright is an opportunity, as he said, to invite the city to build a performance within it. So now this work is part of that work, and he takes it another level, an even more hands-off level. Come and respond to the work. Nona, come and respond to the work. Reggie, come and respond to the work. And they're all like, well, what do you want me to do? And he's like, I want you to do what you want to do. And so I think that that's kind of an unheard of place in the art world. As I say we, but as he or other artists get to a bigger platform, it also generally is one that you protect more, because you're afraid of losing that. You've worked really hard to get there, and the more you let go, the more that you have less control. And so I think that's what I want to contribute to the conversation mostly, is that his work is about relinquishing some amount of control so that it can do its work. The big idea is there, it's done, it's Chase, it's in that room. And now what you're going to experience is Noel's work and the Sing Harlem Choir, but it's also all the dancers that Francesca Harper pulled from across this city that's making that work. And they're making the movement to the work. And then there's people like Nona who are making brand new work in the work. And you'll see, if you go sit down in the performance Upright later, that you're part of the work too. And that's really what we're trying to do, is make sure that what you're coming to is not a performance the way we generally define a performance. It's not looking at something that we hope that you get this story from. It's, I'm giving you this story so that you could find your own story in it and go through it.
Yeah, that's what it does, so congratulations. And definitely the choir, it must be said, and you'll see, is really in a kind of contrapuntal relationship with the dancers who occupy some kind of echoes, call and response to some of the content that's rooted in gospel that the children are delivering. And, they bring a lot of content because they talk about fear and vulnerability. It's real. It's obviously real. This isn't a performance. But the performance also brings you to this place of incredible jubilee, just like incredible festivity, which is the span, right? But the politics of that fear, not just the politics of it, the feeling of that fear and vulnerability doesn't actually go away for me by the end of the performance. And it's deep and it's a little bit hard. I mean, I don't want to spoil it, but there's a lot going on there. I mean, how do you all feel about that kind of specific depth that's brought out in the performance? Do you feel it? Do you see it? Do you want it?
I just think it's my reality. It's not. I think about like when I'm creating my work, and I think like it would be interesting to see if there's something else I could talk about, as opposed to what I'm having to sort of address all the time. So that's just an interesting thought for me. Like, if I didn't have to deal with racism, what type of work would I be making today? So for me, it's really sort of, it's reality, and how do I sort of take what is difficult, sort of repressive, and still find, at the same time I have to be relevant, I have to be extraordinary, I have to be everything that I imagine I can be, in spite of all of that. So, you know, part of it is the fuel that feeds the work, and my own sort of beliefs about who I am and what I am in the world.
We're always going to have fear. And I feel like this piece, you know, we always get into our own little worlds and our day is so busy, but this piece brings us to a reminder that everything's going to be all right. We need to be reminded sometimes. We need to check back in with ourselves. And what this reminds me is that we'll never walk alone, which is a piece that we actually do within the performance. So fear is always going to be there, but when you see other people that are going through, that we're more alike than different, really, that are going through the same things, and you come to an experience like this, and you say, wow, you know what? I'm around people, I'm not alone, you'll never walk alone, and it's just a reminder that everything is going to be all right. We have to trust. We have to let go of the fear even more, even if it's not all the way gone. It's a reminder that we can begin to unfold these layers, and it's okay.
I think it's amazing to have, in this city, a temporary temple of dance and music to come into and let go. It's like Central Park. It's like, you know, the spaces that we have here where we can go, those who live here, and just, you know, have our moment of expressing ourselves, whether it's biking, whether it's running, whether it's swimming, and this is another space for people to come in and just, you know, let go of some of the New York, some of that ambulance going by that we heard, that is so New York. And it's a temple for me, and that's how I feel about coming in here, that you've taken a space that isn't that at all, that was built for a totally different reason, really not to let go, and a space where people actually, even within the movement that they were doing in there, it was a sense of control, but also the discipline and improvisation, because individuals within that drill hall, there's an individual having an experience and the pleasure of movement, whether they're marching or, you know, but in a march, it's a controlled environment. In this space, what you've created is a space to have that individual let go feeling and release in a space that wasn't created for that. And I think that that is really, that's to me what art does in the world. It transforms conditions, and which then ultimately transforms people, and then people transform the art, and it becomes this sort of cycle of call and response again, call and response again. So that's what I feel about this and this being here.
I'll add to that in that in the world today, we operate in our silos and we listen to what we want, what we seek out. And so there's very few places for us to be together and have differing views. And we're so not used to having that conversation, or those arguments are so scary that we just avoid them, that we need places and ways to express those things together. And movement and dance allows us to have those equal and opposite opinions and express them together to each other, and they're safe because we can't hear them the wrong way. We have to just feel that movement. And I think that's why dance in Chase, the Let Go, is such an important thing. Here's a community space where anything can be said, a town hall where nobody can hear it the wrong way, but still express it however they need to, as big as they want to or as quiet as they want to. And the other cool thing that Chase does as it goes through there, that you knew, but I don't think I fully knew until we were in it, is that I could go into that drill hall and know that Chase is moving through here and then get involved with the group that I came with. And all of a sudden, Chase slices through the group, and now the group's over here and over here. But now I'm with somebody else, and I've got to have a relationship with that person because I'm like, shit, I'm looking at you, right? Your eyes are there, you're with them. And so it's this most amazing, literal way that art puts people together.
Oh, I wanted to also say that what was so interesting the other day at the rehearsal with the choir, the song that you're singing, You'll Never Walk Alone, is a song that Patti LaBelle and the Bluebells were very well known for. And when I heard it start, I was like, oh, how brilliant, you know? And it's sort of like, again, you know, it's like time collapsing where this young lady, I knew her mother before she was thought about, you know, is now performing that particular song in this space with somebody who I love and adore because he created the space for it to happen. And that's just like, that's so beautiful to me. So just wanted to say that.
Yeah. Oh. Yes. Yeah, and for me, I, you know, get a lot of energy from watching the construction of the sound suit and then the performance in the sound suit. And it's back to dressing up for me in the way that is, you know, for church or for the street or for the club or for the ceremony. That's a way of sort of outperforming the kind of powerlessness that also is present in the space. Now, I'm not an expert in all of your work, but I've never seen a kind of construction process like that before. Is that something new for you? Or I see these sound suits arrive as deities, fully formed, you know?
Yeah, and I think for me it was, you know, I really wanted to sort of give an audience sort of the back of the house or sort of insight into the studio and how a sound suit is built. And so it's funny, I was watching the performance yesterday and, you know, you're like sort of watching this sort of process. You're watching this individual strip down. So they become extremely vulnerable at that moment. And then you start to see them being rebuilt. And at some point, they have completely sort of dissolved and have become this sort of majestic sort of figure. But you're wondering at the same time, like, when did that happen? I'm watching it, but it's that one moment that they rise. And then you're encountering this other being. And so, you know, it was something that I was interested in sort of creating, was that sort of behind the scenes, look into the studio, and also this sort of rite of passage. You know, I was thinking really about myself as a young man and thinking that, you know, the absence of father and not having that rite of passage, and how could I sort of create a work that provides that for young adults that have not received that, and so this process becomes a form of delivery.
It's really incredible. Do the dressers who are part of the cast as well, do they have some kind of autonomy? Are they designing things, or is it all pretty set? I was wondering, because they seem to be making some kinds of choices about where to put different parts of the garment. If you want to answer that, you don't have to.
Yeah, so those dressers, we consider them practitioners. And so those finished sound suits are specific, and they're designed based on what Nick has come up with. But there's lots of decision making that does go along with it. So one of the coolest parts about Upright is that there is a real connection between the practitioner and the initiate. And as the practitioner has to learn that very complicated process of putting this suit together and memorize what has to go first in order for the second piece to go in, otherwise the second piece won't fit, right? They come up with a system that helps them identify that stuff and talk it through. And so they may say, I've got a red stick, and this red stick represents fearlessness, and I'm placing fearlessness on your shoulder. And so by them talking that through and assigning meaning and a name to this stick, they won't forget that fearlessness goes on the shoulder and it's red. And the person in the suit is like, man, I just got that fearlessness, right? And so with each of those pieces and parts, some of them are upwards of 20 specific pieces, 30% specific pieces. And it takes time, and it's durational, and we've done it many, many times before you've seen it. They're actually feeling that, and that energy is truly transferring to them. And you'll hear it talked about in the dressing room afterward, that they're truly feeling it, and that's why they can endure it. It's because they know that it's not enduring, it's accepting and receiving.
And it's a very kind of ceremonial process.
That process that I just described is also something that was not assigned to them. The first time we did it, we saw that happening. And so when we saw that happening and that actually working is when we now say, hey, this happened here. You may want to do that. You may want to come up with your own way. But we just keep encouraging everybody to know that this is a special relationship that we want you to really connect to.
And I think with the practitioner and the initiate, I mean, you have to remember that, I haven't met you, you haven't met me. And so how do we build a relationship? Because we're going to be working together for the next 4 weeks. And you are going to be building me up. And what does that mean? And how do we want to sort of determine what that means? And so it's just as much about receiving as well as giving. And so, but that's all done through this form of communication and intersection. And I think it's the same with, although it's not that process, but it's the similar process with the musicians, with the keyboardist. It's all sort of, we're receiving, we're giving. And again, there's so much extraordinary work that's happening sort of behind the scenes that, we get together and we have, sort of at the end of the day, discussions about process, experience, there are testimonies, and this is really this is where it all makes sense for me. I mean, it makes me understand why I do what I do, and it sort of connected to service, and it's my purpose. And so then then that's how I can sort of get out of my own way.
And let go enough to bring all of these people in with you. And Noel, we shouldn't neglect to mention that you also tear down the house as a singer in this performance, not just bringing all of that. And you have some high notes that are really from another dimension, and everything else as well. I perform. You're often trying to be really present and aware of what's happening around you, and sometimes that's hard when you're just trying to do it right. But there's so much happening there, right? You have so many people, so many different kinds of people, so many non-human people on stage with you.
So I got 3 directions when this project approached us. 2 of them were the songs that they wanted to infuse in the installation. And is it okay to say them? Should I leave it as a surprise? Okay. So You'll Never Walk Alone, which is a song from the musical Carousel, and Changed, which is a song done by Tremaine Hawkins. Our organization had worked with Tremaine Hawkins in the past, and when I heard that we were going to do it, I fell on the floor because it's one of my favorite songs, it's a gospel staple of all time. And then You'll Never Walk Alone has been covered by so many major artists, Ella Fitzgerald, I mean, everybody. And he said, this is the one that I want you to model it after. And he sent me this video with Patti LaBelle. She had a big mohawk, and it was at the Apollo Theater. And she had fringe all the way to the floor. And said, okay, so that's what you want. I said, well, we can give it to you. Because I like to do that. So you guys are going to hear a little bit of that. But, I was surrounded growing up by amazing singers, and the impact of the show Mama, I Want to Sing, which is the longest running African-American musical in musical theater history, had birthed so many singers that have been infamous. So, and I learned to do that, so I immediately connected to that. When he said Patti LaBelle, boom, it was on. So we were able to turn that on. But then once I was learning about the sound suits and what the piece was creating, we had to underline it with, the third note I got was that you wanted to have obviously a political undertone, and bringing the next generation of the youth, and the hands up, don't shoot stance was extremely powerful. That's the third note that I had got. But with that being said, we wanted to add some undertones of the ancestors, and with the gospel music, and that's why at the Mama Foundation we teach gospel, because gospel is really the root of all our African American music in general, and a lot of music in general. So I took some of those sounds. When your mother used to hum, or your grandmother may used to hum, we teach a humming lesson at our school. And those hums are really sounds of the ancestors in communication with each other. So the lesson in humming, and you're gonna hear some of I had infused some of those hums inside of this piece, because humming, when you think about humming, we hum in the shower, and that automatic feeling is what is it, joyous. It's like, when you think about like a stereotypical vision of humming, something comes over you that's a positive connotation. And that's kind of how we got through in the slave fields, and reading and writing wasn't allowed, but the first right they had was to sing. And that was a language, and it brought them to a spirit of hope, and it brought them to a spirit that they can keep on keeping on. And so for me, it was really important to infuse that humming inside of this whole piece. So you're going to hear that as well. Actually, I can keep on talking. I can shut up.
But I want to say that, Noel invited us to the Red Rooster to, this is when we first sort of heard the choir, and you know, she's so modest. When I met her here, I didn't even know she could sing. She'd never mentioned it or said anything about it, and she was very sort of timid, and I was like, okay, welcome to the Red Rooster. And so we came there, and so we heard the choir, and it was amazing, and then we heard her. And I was like, what? and so it was really remarkable. And so when she was sort of emailing, like, you know, I need some direction, I need, you know, some sort of idea of how the direction you want me to approach this. And I was like, well, here, this is the direction, because you can do that. So it was really sort of me sort of seeing her and realizing that she is extraordinary in the most extraordinary way, that it was absolutely no other choice but to send her what I did. And I wanted her to then sort of wrestle with that. What does that mean for her?
I was talking to Bob about it earlier, and I'm grateful for that you acknowledged me, because my entire life I have been in my family's circle, which has done amazing things, and then being a legacy child, a daughter of a famous person, is not easy. And to find your own identity is not easy. And they came to the Red Rooster and they said, well, this is great, but what are you doing? And that I got a lump in my throat. I became, that acknowledgement from the outside that's not inside your comfort zone is like, it like hits you like, oh, somebody out there really acknowledges you, and it felt amazing. So thank you for that, for acknowledging me, for putting me on this panel, which was unexpected, and I'm just grateful for this whole process. So thank you.
Yeah, this is real, everybody. And I know it's supposed to be an open thing, a call and response, but if you have no experience with gospel music, you clap on the offbeat. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Last night it was a kind of call and response between one group of people and another group of people. And we need to wrap up because we're about out of time. I wonder if you have a last word, and I just want to make sure, Nona, you're going to sing in your performance here. Can we at least count on that?
I'm wearing an outfit. Yeah. Yes, I'm going to sing. Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
Do you all have that last word?
You know, again, I want to thank the Park Armory for this invitation, and I'm thrilled with the outcome, thrilled with the process that we've all sort of come together collectively and built together, and excited that we're delivering it to all of you, and you know, enjoy the Let Go and bring many people. And you know, if you have that bad day after work, jump in the cab, get here, and just let go.
Wonderful. So please join me in thanking these incredible artists for speaking with us.